So we thought we would tell you about our trip to Oklahoma. And we went to Oklahoma to see Collins graduate from basic training in the Army. It was a fantastic memory. Like, let's just say that. I'm glad.
It went bad in all the like in a good way. Like, it was hysterical. Like, the whole trip was just crazy.
So we left, we rented a van so we could take all of us. It was me, Zach, Nate, and Delilah. And we rented a van, which was really good. It was
It's a pretty good van.
it was spacious.
Yeah.
So first out of the gate, it had a vacuum in it, right? So they had a vacuum and it could run with the battery, like the car's battery. Does that make sense? So if you vacuum, you're just using the car battery. And
I thought it was a great idea while we were driving to start up the vacuum.
And vacuum up his match, right? At least he was trying to do that.
Like, clean up after myself. But apparently when you do that,
It sets off an alarm, and not just a tiny alarm, like a huge alarm.
we thought the car was broken because it was just beep. We all freaked out for a minute. So I got to pull all the way over from the interstate, all the way over to the side of the road, put the van in park so that way it would stop beeping.
And we kept asking, what's going on? What's going on? And Nate's like, I don't know.
I didn't think the van's yeah.
And then we figured out it was the vacuum. And he got yelled at for a bit. So that was the first thing before we even left Utah. That's the first thing. And then we're driving down to Oklahoma, and
We were like on the what was the next thing that happened?
I don't know, but I was gonna knit the entire way, but I got car sick for some unknown reason, and Zach was like freaking out. We're not gonna do this. We're not gonna do this. But it went away. I don't know why I got car sick, but I did. I didn't
did
puke
too
or anything.
for a little bit.
Yeah, it was just weird. But we got through that, and then as soon as we hit Texas, there were tornado warnings. We had never been through a tornado. Never. And it was kind of late at night.
What do you mean late at night? It was like 1 o'clock in the morning.
And yeah, so it was interesting. So I was kind of freaking out, and I'm like, we can't. Every time we tried to pull over to the rest stop area, whatever, it was chock full of semis. But it was chock full. One right after the other. You could not pull over.
You guys went what, 30 miles?
Yeah.
And there was 5 or 6 that we passed by, and they were full. They were either a half a mile long or a mile long, and they were just full of semis. And we were like, well, there's a semi to our left, semi to our right.
We were surrounded by semis.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was safe or not. Obviously they would be picked up and we might have been left behind, but not really sure. But we were racing to get out of because of course we're thinking about the Twister movie, and there was no rain. There was no weather whatsoever. And so I'm like, well, there's no rain. We can just keep going. Let's just keep going until we hit rain. Because when we hit the rain, per the movie, we would be in the tornado. But it was really scary because lightning would hit, not around us, but it was far off. It was some ways away. And you could see the tornadoes touching down. We were surrounded by tornadoes.
But we were also driving, I don't know what road we took, but we were flatlands for miles as far as you could see. There was not a mountain or anything in sight. It was just flat land.
And Nate and Delilah were totally asleep. Me and Zach were like, oh, Mom,
You
totally
guys were
awake.
on pins
We
and
were
needles and freaking out. I wake up and I'm like, what is going on? And Mom's like, there's tornadoes all around us. And I'm like, what do you mean? There's semis that are we're surrounded by semis. And then once we were there's like a gap between like the semis, and once we hit a gap and I could actually see and lightning struck, I saw dark clouds and something hit the ground, and I was like, it looks like a light pole to me, but it was definitely something big and big black clouds every time a lightning hit the ground.
It was amazing.
Yeah,
it was an amazing sight to see, but I would not like to go through there again.
Yeah, thank goodness we didn't have that on the way back.
And I kept telling Zach, there's got to be a shelter in place. Like, you know, something should come on the radio that tells us where to go to get to a shelter. And
we ended up pulling off the road for a little bit to let the semis in front of us
and
go.
Nobody was awake. Like, all the gas stations, if it was not a Maverick or Flying J or Pilot or whatever, they were all shut down. Like, nobody was around.
That was for...
And we were in small little towns, so that could be it too. But yeah, it was pretty scary.
And we ended up driving a couple miles away from that to hit a Pilot. We kept making stops because we needed food and stuff like that, and
needed
snacks.
A break because Zach was living on energy drinks, and it was amazing. We were trying to outrun the storm, but thankfully we were okay. Like, it wasn't too.
We were gonna be late booking our hotel room.
Getting to our hotel room because we were supposed to be there by 7, and this whole fiasco made us late.
We were there at like 10.
We got to the outskirts of Oklahoma. Like, I don't even remember the city that we had to go to, but we were in the outskirts by the time that we had to check in. And of course, my phone had died, and I did not have any service, but I had forwarded the email to Zach's phone so that we could call if we needed to. But we didn't really know that we had to call before that time. I just thought that we'd have an early check-in, and I told them that. So I thought that we would be okay and nothing would happen, and we got there like at 8 or 9, and I'm just so amazed. So we got there. Me and Zach have not slept, and the lady tells us that she gave our rooms away because I did 2 rooms, one for me and Zach and one for Delilah and Nate and my mom because she was gonna fly out there. And the lady is like, "Oh, I gave your rooms away," and I'm like, "Why would you give our rooms away? We were in a tornado. My phone is dead. I couldn't call you. There was no
service anywhere. There was not a telephone pole or thing anywhere for hundreds of miles."
Yeah, I don't know, but it was just hilarious to me that she gave our rooms away. And she's like, "Well, there's such a need for the rooms." I'm like, "Really? You're offering to give us rooms now, but the rooms were taken at 7 o'clock in the morning. Are you kidding me?" And
we ended up getting a hotel room, and the one that we got the 2 rooms in. We ended up getting one hotel room there, and then right across from that hotel was another hotel room.
So the room that we had scheduled was right here, and then in the parking lot over here was Fairfield Inn & Suites.
Yeah.
And this was Spring Hill. And so it wasn't that far away. So one room was in this one and one room was in this one. But she did not tell us that the room in Fairfield was the top floor or that the elevator was broken. Like, we did not even know.
And then they're like, "Well, we have a pool." I was like, "Okay." And she's like, "Yeah, you guys can go swimming in the pool." I'm like, I take one look at that pool.
It was
and
so disgusting.
It was green, and there was stuff floating on top, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll take a hard pass on that." And I even told the lady, and she's like, "Oh, what? I didn't know that." And there is something wrong with our room. The one that me and Destiny stayed in, but I don't remember.
Well, you guys weren't able to check in until later that evening.
Yeah.
Like 4 or something. So we went over to Fairfield, we got our room, and we stayed there, and we slept for a little bit. After we made the hike, we found out that the elevator wasn't working, and we did the hike.
The 5th floor.
Yeah. Yeah, it was the top floor, so it was the fourth floor. Even though it doesn't sound that big for me, it was really unexpected and hard for me to climb up those stairs because I had just gotten out of physical therapy because I couldn't walk.
Yeah.
So that was very intense. Very intense. And I have to say that I'm very grateful for my paint drink because that lady would not have made it through my wrath previously. Like, I don't know how I even functioned.
I'm really surprised Zach didn't yell at the lady.
Yeah.
Honest with you, because
Like-
it was kind of ridiculous.
It was. And then, yeah, so then we finally got settled, whatever, and we had to get my mom from the airport. We decided to go up to base and get her pass, right? And it was like out the door. So let's talk a little bit about Oklahoma heat, right? So
It was
unbearable, like
it was
totally horrible.
It was like 98 degrees, but
The humidity was awful. Like it was just
80 to like 90% humidity.
You were just drenched in sweat from the minute that you woke up. All
I
the
wouldn't say
time, like
drenched in sweat, but yeah, it was definitely humid. It would make you sweat a little bit.
yeah. So anyway, we went there and you could not get in. There was a line all the way outside of the
It was
visitor center or whatever where you get your pass. It was a long line.
It was like a 2-3 hour wait.
Yeah.
Not to mention that it took like another hour for you to get all the passes.
Yeah. It was intense. So, unfortunately, there was a miscommunication about when I was supposed to go get my mom. So, she ended up having to rent a car and went and got her pass. But, yeah, it was a long time till we saw her. And we went to a place for lunch, and that was a really good place. It was like a Mexican restaurant.
It was good.
I don't remember where it was, but we actually went there again because it didn't look like there were a lot of restaurants in the town.
There were, but it was like they weren't open.
Yeah. Like everybody like shut down at 4:00. I kid you not. Like there was like nothing after 4 that was open.
Yeah, it was either 10 o'clock in the morning or and then it would close at like 4. So we're used to eating at like 5 or 6 because places around here don't close around 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was kind of different for us because we're like, what? Everything's closed around 4?
Yeah, it was way intense. And then we finally got to see Collins. I was so super excited about that. And he, after the little scare thing that was planned, he got to come with us and go to our hotel. And the first thing he wanted to do was get out of his uniform. And he could do that in our hotel. So we went to our hotel and played games, and it was fun. It was way fun. So
so before he graduated basic training, he had a day to spend with the family. So he had a day to spend, so like a couple hours, and then he had to go back because he had a curfew, and then graduation. That's when he was able to spend another 5 hours with us, and then after that he had to go back to the base, and we had to go back to Utah. Nothing extraordinary happened on the way back, but we Zach ended up buying these because they said moonshine, like spicy moonshine, but
there was
turns
no
out
alcohol.
There's no it was not an alcoholic, and it was just a liquid spice. So yeah, that was.
It's gross.
I didn't want to try it. I still haven't.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you think about me on the trip? Like, what do you remember about my temperament?
Your temperament?
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, we were all kind of exhausted. Like, that was driving down there. Not only the fact that we were stuck in a car for a couple of hours, or not a couple, it was like a day drive, wasn't it? Like,
Yeah.
13 hours, 14 hours, and we were all exhausted. We tried to play. We tried to play Roma Cube
in the car, which was not fun for me because I was in the front seat and
it
it was so bad. It was so bad. So we forego that, and we couldn't do Skip Boo, which is my favorite game, because we didn't have anybody anywhere to sit together
until we put the seats down.
Yeah. And so we forgot the funniest part of the trip. So we
yeah.
We had to go back to the hotel room because I had to use the bathroom. Like so I was
this is when we were done with hanging. We dropped Collins off from the base, and this was the first day, not graduation, but that was the first day that we were able to spend with them, and we had to go back to the hotels because we were all tired.
Yeah, and I was gonna sew or knit, and so I'm like, "Where's my knitting? I don't have my knitting," and I'm like, "You could get my knitting to Collins or to Zach," and he got on the phone with his work or whatever. And I was frustrated that he got on the phone instead of going to get my knitting. So I'm like, fine, I'll go get it, you know? And I had just used the restroom. Okay, I just took a huge crap. And I lit a match like my grandma had taught me to make it not stink. And then I ran downstairs to get my knitting, because I thought it was in the van. And then Zach went outside to smoke while he was on the phone with his coworker, and I went back upstairs because it wasn't in the van, and I'm like, I guess it's in with my other bag or whatever. So I went back upstairs and I couldn't get into her room because I didn't have a key. So I'm like, did you shut the door? And he's like, yeah, I did. He's like, I'm like, well, it's locked. We're locked out. And he's like, he hadn't quite came upstairs, so he went to the what is that called? The reception area or the front desk? Yeah, the front desk. And there is a fire alarm going off in our room.
Well, so there wasn't a fire alarm going off. It was going off in the reception area, and the lady.
And Zach calls me and is like, is there a fire alarm going off in our room? And so I pushed my ear to the door and I'm like, yeah, there is a fire alarm.
And that was going on for quite a while. The fire department showed up.
Yeah.
They came and showed up, and they're like, your fire alarm's going off. The front desk lady hears the alarm, like, it's a loud alarm. You can't mistake that. And she's like, oh, is it? Because she was on the phone. And she's like, oh, okay.
They actually hung up her phone call because she's been on the phone the entire time.
Yeah.
And they actually hung up their phone call, and they're like, you have fire alarm going off. We need access to that room. Where's that room? And she's like, oh. And then she said the room, and Zach's like, that's my room, you know?
And the fire guys are like, oh, okay, well, come with us to the elevator. And Zach's like, oh, the elevator doesn't work. And they're like, the elevator doesn't work? And we're like, yeah. So they are in full fire
I felt
protection
so bad
gear.
for those guys.
They have the oxygen tanks, like, they're fully suited. And they had to make the 4-flight stair.
They made it pretty quick. They outran Zach, let me just say that.
Yeah, and they get to the door, and Mom's there, and that was so...
And we got into the hotel room, and they're looking around, there's nothing there. He's like, why do you think it was activated or whatever? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, well, I took a crap and lit a match, and I guess it got triggered from that. And this black guy was laughing his butt off, because I'm just this little old lady. Well, not old, but yeah, he was just laughing at me. Because what would you do if you were... That's just something I was taught, and I didn't know I would set it off. And they're really sensitive. Those fire alarms are really sensitive. So, yeah.
Yeah. You did that a couple of times before
No.
that.
Yeah, I did it because Zach went and used the restroom and it stunk. He can stink you at house and home. So I lit the match, but I shut the door.
Oh yeah, and you left the door open that time and you didn't turn on the fan.
Yeah. Yeah. So, lesson learned. Don't
Do
light a
not-
match.
Do not.
Yeah, that was super funny. But anyway, that's pretty much our Oklahoma trip. Do you have anything else?
Not really. I feel like we're missing a couple things, but
I just feel like everybody kept telling me that like something was off with me because I was like not before Oklahoma. I was like high strung and I was easy to anger. I
you're I don't know how to say that. Well, like you were very emotional. Like when
Yeah.
you would bring up something, you would get very emotional and over dramatic about stuff.
yeah. But when I went on the trip, like that has stopped, and I got a lot of comments from you and Grandma and
Yeah.
Zach. Like, what's going on with you? You're not yourself. And I'm like, well, I'm fine. The only thing I changed was I started my pink drink. I got a sample from Rachel Miner for the entire week. And I saved it for this trip to see if it would do anything or not. But I think it did. I was able to go up those 4 flights of stairs multiple times a day. And yes, I did take breaks every so often because it was tiring. But I was able to do that. And we also went to an escape room, and I was able to have the energy to do that. And before, I wouldn't have been able to do that.
That escape room was really easy.
But it was hard at the same time. Like, Grandma, like, didn't know what to do. So she just kind of...
Well, Grandma doesn't really know what to do.
I know. She just kind of excused herself, if you can say that.
Yeah.
She didn't really participate in it, but it was really fun.
Yeah. It was fun. We ended up beating it. And
I think we were like really fast at beating it because like they were telling us that we didn't have any helps or hints or whatever.
yeah. And they're like, that's the first time that no one's done that and not gotten any help.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
It was definitely really fun. I felt like it was pretty easy.
Yeah. Well, that's our trip. That's our funny story. We'll see you later.